Hi everybody, welcome to my Cook at Home series with Tonya here at Cooking on the Bay. Nice to have you back. Today we're cooking a Basque French Pipérade, which is basically a capsicum stew with some tomatoes and with eggs nestled on top. Now I'm going to start by putting my onions on because I want them to cook for about 10 minutes, and so while they're cooking I'll be talking to you about how we're going to do the dish. In the pan I've got some extra virgin olive oil and a couple of knobs of butter. I'll put a little bit more in. Just sliced onion, it isn't, just put a couple more in, and a little bit of olive oil. And when the pan gets hot, I'll move it over to my other burner. Okay, so I'll just keep an eye on that for a few minutes. Okay, so a pipérade, as I said, is from the Basque region of France, and so it's all about peppers and tomatoes. It's quite delicious and luscious. It's actually, I like to call it a capsicum stew. There are many similar dishes in other countries. The Italians have a peperonata, which is very similar. And if you travel around the Mediterranean, you'll find that the Moroccans have a dish called a Berber omelette, which we sometimes make in Moroccan cooking classes here. And the Middle Eastern people, they have a shakshuka, which you're possibly also familiar with, and we also make that in our Mediterranean classes here. They're all similar in that they've got tomatoes, onions and capsicums, and they're finished with eggs. Okay, so I'll just keep that slowly humming along. As you know, I like to cook my onions slowly for about 10 minutes so that they become lovely, luscious and golden. Okay, and if we want them to be a darker colour, you just have to turn the heat up a little bit and cook them for longer. But we don't want these necessarily coloured, we just want them past translucent and into golden. So to them we're going to add some peppers. Now I've finely sliced the peppers and I've taken out the membrane. I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment. I've finely diced up some 2 or 3 garlic cloves, and depending on the size of the garlic you can add as much as you like. There's a couple of capsicums, red, and a couple of green, and a couple of yellow. Now, when you make this at home, please suit yourself for the quantity that you want. This quantity is going to fit into this dish more than comfortably, I think. And once we've sweated down the capsicums and they've cooked well, we're going to add our tomatoes, and we've got some oregano. I've got some chilli here, which was a fresh chilli. It's just dried out a little bit, as you can see. So I do dry out chilies once they get a bit crinkly, and I dry them and then I put them through my little bullet machine, and I get nice chilli flakes, which we use all the time in cooking class. So if ever you have a dried chilli, just pop them in the machine, a Thermomix or your bullet, or chop them up yourself as I've done here, and use them in your cooking. So I'm going to be adding those, and then we're going to let this sit for a while and stew right down, okay? So it's going to be nice and thick and luscious. Okay, I'll just put that on the back burner now. Get a bit of heat in the pan. Okay. So when we've done the base for the capsicum stew, we're going to pop it into an earthenware dish or an oven-proof dish of your choice. And we're going to nestle 4 little eggs. I'm going to make little divots here, little holes, make 4 little, and put the eggs in, and then we're going to bake it for about 10 minutes. Now you can do them in individual little pots if you like, little pots such as this. You could do it in if you wanted to and have a nice breakfast dish or a lunch dish. I sometimes serve this as on its own, but I also serve it as a side, as a vegetable side. We had it with some steak the other night and it was quite luscious and nice, and it was a good addition to it. Now, as you know, all the dishes that I'm cooking in this series are all low carbohydrate and healthy fat, so they fit into the category nicely because there's there's protein in the eggs, and there's lots of vegetables, and there's some good fat here as well, because we're going to be adding our butter obviously when we make it. And to garnish it, when it comes out, the eggs will be look like poached eggs. And we're going to crumble up some Persian feta. You could add soft curd goat's cheese, whatever you might have on hand, some Castello cheese. I just like the look of it on top. in the Middle Eastern class, when I do my shakshuka, for the Mediterranean class, we will often make our labna, okay? And to make your own labna, you get a really good quality, nice, good Greek yogurt, and you put it over a strainer with some muslin, and you drain it. You're draining out the whey, and then you have your labna, which is a nice, thick, similar consistency to this Persian feta, and we'll often scatter that on top of our shakshuka, and it would be very nice scattered on this, except that it's more Middle Eastern, and because it's a French dish, not that that really matters. I'll just show you what I do with these. The important thing with these, it's a bit like when you're peeling oranges and you're wanting oranges for a ragged orange dessert. You don't want any of the pith, we don't want any of the membranes here, okay? So we're going to remove them. We don't want the seeds either. Sometimes you don't mind seeds, but I don't want a lot of seeds. I don't mind a few seeds from the chilies, but you don't want the white membranes because it detracts from the colour, as well as you don't want the flavour of the membranes. They're a bit tart, whereas these capsicums are lovely and sweet. So just, you can see that it's worth spending a few minutes getting rid of all the membranes when you're doing this. That'll be enough, I think. If you cut too much up there, you can just add it in. Not to waste any. And then all we're going to do is simply just make sure these aren't catching. So then all we're going to do is just slice it. And I've said in the recipe to make it about quarter of a centimetre, half a centimetre. I think I said half, but these are more like a quarter of a centimetre. So it just depends. I like them thinner, and I've also made them thinner today because I thought they would take less time to cook. But it's up to you. You might not want them to be as thin strips as this. Okay. So you can see they look nicest without those white membranes there. Okay, so I think we could, I know it hasn't been quite 10 minutes, but I think we may add our peppers and start that process. With this dish, there are many different versions of it. Some people just use all green peppers. In fact, I think Elizabeth David tends to err on the side of all green peppers with a few red, but she doesn't necessarily have the yellow and the mixture of colours like I've got here. But I like to have equal quantities, particularly if the yellow are available, and the yellow are available at the moment and they're not particularly expensive. Put this back on this to get a bit more heat in. And the colours are just beautiful. The other thing, the traditional French pipérade, I've changed the recipe slightly. The traditional French pipérade actually has the eggs, instead of nestled into the top and look like sort of poached eggs or baked eggs, they actually put them through, they whisk them up and they put them through the capsicum stew, and they sort of slightly scramble. Now, I'm not so fond of that, but you might like it, it might suit you, so if that's what you'd like to do, you do that. Now I'm going to leave that for a few minutes to let it sweat down. About 10 minutes, I think. I might put my garlic in as well. No, I'll nestle the garlic in because I don't want that to burn, so there's plenty in the pan to stop it from burning. I'll put the garlic in. Add a little bit more oil. So you can see that these capsicum are sweating down quite nicely. So we'll add our chilies now. And for those of you who are particularly observant, you might realise that I've swapped my pans because the other one was just a little bit too small for all my capsicums. I underestimated the size of it. And for those of you who know me in cooking classes, I actually find it very hard to get my spatial volume containers the right size, etc. So we often have to try a few. So anyway, doesn't matter, just swap it over, which is what I've done. I've added my chilli, and I'm going to add, this is half a teaspoon. I'm going to add just half a teaspoon of the dried oregano leaves to start with. I won't add any more of my dried chili flakes because I think there's enough in there. And I'm going to add some salt and pepper. So that's just 1 teaspoon of, well, this is about a half teaspoon for the moment because we're going to cook this down. And then we're going to add our tomatoes and we're going to let it cook down again until it becomes just really a thick, luscious vegetable stew, capsicum stew. And the colours are just so attractive, aren't they? Okay. So it's very important to adjust the seasoning before you bake these because sometimes in cooking classes people forget to do that final tasting, and sometimes I find that it just doesn't have the same zing as it would have if you put enough of the appropriate salt and pepper, particularly the sea salt. The sea salt I'm using today is a Murray River sea salt, right here, beautiful sea flakes. So we're going to let that sit for a little bit longer until the tomatoes cook right down. Okay. I'll just put a bit of pepper in before I leave it. Pepper. I love freshly cracked pepper, as you well know. So when you're seasoning this, if you want the extra pinch of chilli, do so. It's a very free-range dish. No special requirements. You can change your capsicum colours around. But if you're wanting to make the traditional piperade, French piperade, they tend not to put in the yellow capsicums and they put the eggs through the dish at the end rather than as we're going to. But it's sometimes nice to introduce your own touch to these things. So you do that. I won't put any more salt in for the minute. We'll wait until it's reduced down and go from there. So just let it sit for a while. Okay, so now this has been cooking for about 15 minutes and you can see how beautifully reduced it is and how broken down it is. It's just a lovely, luscious capsicum and tomato stew now. So I'll have a little taste and see how they all are. Oh, look, that really is quite lovely. I can taste the chilli, which I like. I like a little bit of chilli. But I am going to add about another half a teaspoon of salt because with all the tomatoes and the capsicum, I think it can do with salt. But this is for your taste, so when you taste it, you can decide. And because I always love pepper, as you know, I'm going to add some more cracked pepper, freshly cracked pepper. So we'll stir that around. Now, you can do this dish ahead of time up to this point, and if you wish, you can then put it in the fridge for a day until you're ready to compile it, as we're going to now. But when you do compile it, you have to bring this mixture back to the heat. It must be hot and sizzling like this is now. Otherwise, this will not be hot enough in time when the eggs have cooked, okay? So this must be hot. As long as this is hot, as it is, as you can see, it will be fine. And then you can nestle your eggs into it, all right? So I'm going to pop this in there. Oh, in fact, I'll do it properly rather than tip it. Now my dish isn't hot, It could be hot if you wanted it to be, but it doesn't need to be. Oh. Very nice. You can see how much these peppers, onions and tomatoes have sweated down and cooked down. So you can just imagine the intensity of the flavours in here, because it looked like it would never fit in this dish, but it will, as you can see. And see how nice and thick that is. It's really, really lovely. Okay, so just smooth the top a little bit. And then you're going to get your spoon and make a few little indentations, and we're going to put our eggs in. Okay, so here they are. And as you know, it's always wise to put them into a little receptacle first, such as my little jug. You wouldn't want to put your eggs directly into there, because you never know, there could be a problem with the egg, and you wouldn't want to ruin your whole beautiful dish that you've spent some time cooking. So just gently pop that in there. Same with this one, same again. These are lovely farm fresh free range eggs that I get from K&L Poultry at the South Melbourne market. Chris there will look after you very well, as will his staff. These are lovely eggs, always lovely eggs. His business has been in his family for a couple of generations now, so that's nice. And lastly, there we go. Oh, done what I just didn't want to do. Do as I say, not as I do. So that should be fine. Okay, so now I'm going to pop this in the oven, and we're going to cook it for about 10 minutes, and I'll check it and see how it's going. Okay, and then it's ready to serve. So the oven is about 180. And we'll take it. Baking sheet, which I often keep in there to dry. And where's my timer? Put my timer on. I've got it on for 9 minutes because I'm going to just check it a minute or so beforehand. Okay, so we'll be back when that's ready to come out of the oven. Okay, so I'm going to check our eggs to see how they're going in our nice Pipérade here. Now, as you can see, one of them didn't have enough white on the top, but the rest of them look just lovely. So I'll just do a little garnish for you. Where's my garnish? A little bit of parsley to give it a fresh look. And I'm going to garnish it also with a little bit of my lovely Persian feta, but as I said, you could use some labneh, you could use some goat's cheese, which would be really nice, soft curd goat's cheese. Just to give it a little brighten up. Now, when I was talking before about serving this, you could actually serve it in individual pots, and I often serve them in individual pots. So you pop your lovely Pipérade in there, or there, and then you break your egg into the top, just as I did by indenting it. And you can see you want to have this so that that lovely yolk is nicely runny, like so. Okay, and that is a lovely, lovely dish to serve. And it doesn't always look as nice as it does when it's in this big pot. That's why I like to serve these things in little individual pots. So I hope you enjoy your capsicum stews with eggs, your pipérade, and you enjoy making it for yourselves at home. Bye bye now.